I really want to focus for a few minutes now on how we see implementation and what's at stake there, and just a little bit more about our approach to implementation. And I think that all of us realize that the work has just begun, really. That you know, as much as has gone into getting these rules right, the implementation challenge is enormous, and it is enormous because of the character of the food system, because of its scale and diversity, its global reach, and the fact that this framework does apply globally, you know, to everybody who's providing product to this market. That's a huge thing, to implement this framework in that sort of global context. It's also a challenge because we are now regulating in areas where we haven't regulated before. That is, regulating entities in the food system who have not been subject to our direct regulation before. And that's, of course, the produce growers who we've been working with in a guidance mode, doing a lot of good work with the produce industry, which has made great progress over the last 10, 15 years. But now, for the first time, there will be enforceable standards on the farms. Believe me, that's a challenging thing. It's a whole shift in sort of understanding of government and private roles around the safe production of produce. And of course, importers, you know, the whole import aspect of this law, with over 150 countries sending product here, over 12 million import entries a year, growing rapidly, supply chains more complex. We see the import aspect of implementation perhaps being the most daunting, in the sense that it's really requiring us to work in completely new ways with foreign partners, with the import community, and a whole new, we think, very robust toolkit in FSMA for strengthening oversight of imports, but one that, with all its multiple elements, needs to be used in a very strategic new way. And so again, we're eager to take on that challenge. We're doing a lot of work to get that strategy right, but these are huge challenges, and I just want to underscore the recognition we have, and I doubt that it's lost on anyone in this room. Lots of work lies ahead. If we do, despite all of that, we do know the importance of implementing this on a timely basis. So we've laid out some fairly elaborate implementation dates that do stretch out over a period of years, particularly for smaller scale operations. But the first compliance dates go into effect for the larger facilities like a year from now. Produce for larger growers 2 years hence, and again sequenced after that. We do think it's right to allow phased-in compliance and to recognize the practicalities of different scale of operations, their ability to implement within certain time frames, but we think it's important that we stick to this, that we be able to implement this law in a timely way as we really have. It's got to be done ultimately so it's effective, of course. It's not just a matter of getting something in place by a certain timeline. It's got to be, done right. And then it's got to be done in a way that this is a simplistic way to describe a complicated idea, but it's got to be done consistently. In other words, we've got to be sure we fulfill the vision of the law, first of all, that these same standards that we're applying domestically will in fact be verified, and accountability will exist for foreign producers. But it also has to be consistent in terms of the nature of the oversight that we do. And in a world in which we envision clearly relying on multiple sources of accountability in this system, not just FDA regulation, but the states continue to be being partners in overseeing facilities, the states being the primary frontline interface with growers, foreign governments providing oversight that we want to take account of, we want to harvest, having part of the harness and be part of the system. How do we, and then of course the private audit system, which is out there, is a very robust right now part of the system. Lots of variability in how that's done. How do we bring consistency into the oversight, the verification that these standards are being met, that we are fulfilling the vision of preventive control? So that's, those are things we've got to achieve, and again, we take seriously the challenge of that. And so that's why we stress so much that implementation will require sustained partnership. And the kind of engagement we've had to get here as far as the rules go is just the beginning, and we've got to build on that. We've got to recognize the common interest that we have, not only getting the rules right, but in getting them implemented in a timely, and efficient, and consistent way. And so we place enormous priority on the public-private collaboration aspect of this. There's extensive, as I mentioned, need for us to be working in new ways with our federal government partners, our state partners, our foreign government partners, but the public-private partnership aspect of this has to be real. And this is a little bit out of the norm for FDA to be speaking in terms of partnership with those we regulate. And I totally get it. In some people's mind, that may sound strange. But let me just be really clear what we mean by that. It's an idea that's based upon this point I made earlier. We see, by and large, the food industry and the people in it overwhelmingly want to do the right thing, have a business interest to do it. Most people are personally motivated to do the right thing. As a practical matter, if you don't do the right thing, you incur the regulatory consequences. We want to harness in achieving our food safety purpose of getting high rates of compliance, getting folks doing the right preventive things. We want to harness that willingness and that capacity that exists in the industry to do the right thing. And that's why our strategy is based on educate before and while we regulate idea. It's why technical assistance and education are so much part of our strategy. And it's why we want to restructure our inspection approaches and our compliance approaches. So the goal is facilitating and achieving compliance in a timely way, not racking up a long list of after-the-fact enforcement actions. Now, so we do believe that we will get to our food safety public health outcomes through real public-private partnership. I would underscore that one of the great strengths of FSMA is that it has given us significant new enforcement power to deal with situations where folks aren't doing the right thing to be prevented, where they don't have they have in place a system or don't have in place a system at all such that consumers are being at risk. And the historic system has been that we would go in and collect evidence of this problem and go back and prepare a warning letter or a judicial enforcement case and take months to figure out what the regulatory consequence is of what we're seeing in the facility, and it's very law-driven, very legalistic. Under FSMA, that's not going to be the mode of compliance anymore. The mode of compliance is going to be, let's assess the system. Let's point out where the problems are. Let's see to voluntary, timely compliance and correction of problems. And if we get voluntary compliance, that's total success. We don't need to rack up an enforcement action. On the other hand, if we don't get voluntary compliance, we have these new administrative enforcement tools. So no longer do we have to go to a court to seize product. We can administratively detain product. We don't have to go to court to get an injunction. We can suspend the registration of facilities that are producing in a way that puts consumers at risk. And so we take both the partnership part of this and the ultimate accountability part of this very seriously. But we're convinced that we'll get 90%. You pick the number. We'll get 90% of the job done by working with those who are committed to doing the right thing, and that is our fundamental principle underlying our compliance strategy. And then when that fails, there are other ways to deal with the issue. Now, to carry out that new way of working, it requires a lot of change within FDA because we are historically organized as a field force that thinks in enforcement terms and inspection terms, and we now have a law and a regulatory framework that says let's think in outcome terms, let's think in food safety prevention terms, and let's be not focused so much on documenting legal violations. Let's focus on our systems doing what they should be doing to prevent problems. And so we're in the process, as we've discussed publicly before, and happy to talk about this today, of fundamentally revamping our whole internal management processes, our training, our orientation of the workforce, so we will be prepared on our part to do this work in the new way. And of course, training and in the preventive controls and the whole systems understanding of food safety. Food safety culture is something that we're training on as well, and Frank has been helpful actually in working with our team and bringing his learning on that into the system. So there's a huge training and workforce preparation aspect of this, but there's also an internal management change aspect to this that will be, I think, very significant and really crucial to success going forward, and that is a process that we're going through across the whole agency of better aligning our headquarters centers where the policy and the standards and the science reside, where ultimate decision-making rests, and that's the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition and the Center for Veterinary Medicine on the food side of the agency, and of course the medical product centers, the drug centers on the medical product side, we're working to realign the field force, the Office of Regulatory Affairs, which manages the FDA field force, realign those forces so that we have fully specialized teams of inspectors and compliance officers managing the field program, conducting the field activities as part of a vertically integrated food and feed program with, again, a specialized workforce and streamlined processes so that we can be not only strategically able to direct the program, but operationally day to day, much streamlined connectivity between these frontline investigators and the subject matter experts in the centers who are the ones who ultimately have to make the judgments, particularly in complex production settings. Is there in fact a systems problem here? Is there something going on here that needs to be corrected immediately? If that's the kind of decision that we want to be supporting a frontline force on through real direct connectivity with subject matter experts who can in real time in the context of an ongoing inspection answer questions and be a resource for the inspector as well as the firm. If the firm is struggling to figure out what's the right answer, how do we provide support in the context of an inspection? So I mention that just to reassure you that while we know now that we've got these rules and the sense that I know we're imposing a lot of work on the outside world, we're doing a lot of work internally to be prepared to do this well. And that's going to be crucial to success long term. We've got to revamp how we internally do this work because the goal is prevention. And of course, that's the fundamental idea behind the FSMA framework. But the goal of our oversight of facilities and farms, for that matter, needs to be real-time prevention. It can't be the mode anymore where we find a problem and we think correction needs to be made, and we come back and the state comes back weeks or months later. If there's a real food safety risk involved, it needs to be corrected on the spot, working with us, working with the firm's own capacities and expert, consultants and so forth. So again, it's a whole culture change in terms of how we fulfill that vision of real-time prevention. And so, that's kind of some dimension of the changes going on within FDA. Again, I know that there's the same culture change, or same food safety culture process going on in many firms. I think this is an idea that really was invented outside of FDA. We want to support that movement and the change that's going on within industry. I think we want to, for example, have our inspection activity take into account our assessments of firms who are the high performers, who do have that food safety culture, who we can, based upon an understanding of how companies are doing their work, we can make judgments about where we ought to be spending our time and attention, and shouldn't be hanging around in companies who have got the first tier systems. We need to focus on folks who need more engagement to be brought along. So we want to work with the industry as it's going through its own change process. And again, together get to where this law envisions us all going, which is a modern, effective, prevention-oriented system that really does meet the expectation that consumers rightly have, that we're all doing everything we reasonably can to make the food supply safe. So that's the quest. We've got lots of challenges. One that's going on right now, of course, is our budget challenge, which I won't give my budget speech because the process is well along. We're optimistic, but remains to be seen what the budget outcome will be. Tons rests on that, the ability to do all these things that we're talking about. There's a training, working with the states, getting the import system set up, all depends on those resources. But I really also believe that as crucial as those dollars are, it rests on all of us. It rests on people within FDA, it rests on people in the industry to do this. And I have total confidence about what lies ahead, and just excited personally to be able to be in this role and to be able to work with all of you. And now to take your questions. As deep as you'd like to go, and I'm good at deflecting questions I can't answer, so don't hold back. We'll look forward to the dialogue to come. Thanks very much.